Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are because it's certainly good to be here. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is the continuation of Baltimore. Yeah, okay. So we're just going to jump right in with the continuation of our story here. And the Burnt District Commission wants you to know how hard they worked. And this is from Monday, August 7th, 1905. Okay, and here we go. Solid progress in Burnt District. More than three-fourths rebuilt 18 months after the fire. Splendid showing for Baltimore. Right? Business center rapidly assuming the form which will make it the finest of its kind in the world. In the world! A story of wonderful results given in figures. And that's the interesting part, of course. They give figures. I'm just going to read this paragraph and then move on to the figures. What Baltimore Grit has done since the fire. This day a year and a half ago began the Great Fire, which inflicted on the principal business district of Baltimore a loss estimated at fully $75 million. So I hadn't read this article yesterday or when I made the last video, so that's kind of cool that that's a number that I put in there. As all the world knows, it raged February 7 and 8, ceasing only when it reached the waterfront. What an extraordinary change since these two memorable days. The burnt district is now more than three-fourths reconstructed, and that too in a manner which will make it superior to the business center of any other city in the world. The taxable basis of this area has already largely increased over what it was before the fire, and is mounting at a rapid rate, as great new improvements are being added. Figures given the Sun today tell the wonderful story in detail. Permits to build have been issued for about 770 of the 958 lots on which the reconstruction of the district depended. The declared cost of the new buildings is over 4 million greater than the total assessments of those destroyed by the fire, and the actual increase is estimated at fully $9 million. So that's how much more money they're expecting to come in, $9 million. And when you times that by 28, you get something like $250 million. That's a lot of money to be over, it's for profit. A glance at the district shows the resident or visitor a vista of large, substantial, and strictly modern business establishments, many of them ornate. Some of the handsomest buildings, like the new home of the Sun and the general office building of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company, are under construction now. On the anniversary of the fire last February, the verdict of the world was that Baltimore had in a year accomplished a tremendous feat. In the last 6 months, she has done a great deal more, and still more is to come. With her new sewerage system, new docks, new parks, and the improvements in the annex, she is spending, or about to spend, more than $100 million on public improvements. A reawakened energy thrills every artery of her activity. Great is Baltimore, and growing greater all the time. Interesting figures to throw about just quickly. The actual increase is estimated fully 9 million, but here they say they're about to spend more than 100 million on 75 million in losses. Interesting that there's quite a significant gap in those two numbers. Here it says a review of the district shows that permits to erect 446 buildings have been issued or filed at an aggregate declared cost of almost $15 million. Now 446 is like half this number, a little more than half. 770 of the 958 lots. So what they're condensing the lots, or combining them rather. So again, a little trickery with the numbers there to boost improvement rates, I guess, and building rates and things like this. They talk about the size of the devastation, how many buildings were lost, and their location. This is where it starts to get interesting for me with the numbers. And they rebuilding by streets. And the following table gives the names of the streets on which this rehabilitation had taken place. East and West Baltimore Street, 30 permits, almost $3 million on West Baltimore Street. That comes out to like $100,000 a permit, which is an insane average. Because when you look at East Baltimore, they get almost $3 million as well. Again, it's a little bit more than what West Baltimore gets, but it's 84 permits, dropping this average down. It's something like 35,000 per lot. So when you start talking about how much are they getting per lot, it gets kind of interesting. Especially with this investment here at almost $100,000 a lot in West Baltimore, which of course isn't right. I mean, I'm sure they probably paid like $1 million for one lot or something. Who knows how it actually worked out? But you can see, some of these lots weren't that expensive. Here we got a $3,400 lot on Grant Street for their $3,400 investment. Here's two lots at 6,000. Two lots even better, Little Sharp, wherever that was, far grander than before. Aside from the gratifying showing, which redounds so vastly to the credit of Baltimore's business community and property owners, there are other features of great interest. And I thought redounds was a great word. It's like, is that a real word, redounds, or is that like a typeset misprint? And no, it's a real word. Contribute greatly to. I don't think I'd ever heard that one before. At no time since the rebuilding began could so accurate an idea of the improvement over the old Baltimore be gained as at present. Many of the finest structures which were begun a year ago are now having the finishing touches put on them, and in a short time will be ready for occupancy, while others have already been occupied. Mr. J. Harry Trigo, of the Travelers and Merchants Association, who was prominent in the movement for a Jubilee celebration, recently made an inspection of the burnt district, and he was more than gratified. I feel strongly that the citizens of Baltimore ought to pause at least one day to hold some celebration to call the attention of the world at large to what we have accompanied in the short space of 18 months. And so it's interesting, the Travelers and Merchants Association, so that's a bank, Travelers and Merchants Bank, right? Of course, right? Harry Trigo, and his name is going to come up in just a minute further. Right? So the businessman, they had faith that the city would do this, and now I want to look more at the figures that they have. And it says the following table gives a comparison between the assessed valuation before the fire and the declared valuation of the new buildings since the fire. So before the fire, the block that West Baltimore got burned worth 766,000. It's now worth 3 million. That is a nice return on your investment there. Right? I would say 3 times the amount. That's pretty good. I'll take 3 to 1 over just about anything. East Baltimore, they didn't do as well, right? They're kind of breaking even almost, 400,000 profit, North Charles Street's a nice little profit there, not so much on South. But here's where it gets really interesting, because some of these properties take baths. They take absolute baths. West Lombard Street took a bath. 112,000 before the fire, 45 after? How does that work? South Street, 1.3 million to 650,000. That's devastating to that property owner. 57,000 down from 173 on St. Paul Street. But when they average it all out, they say there's, almost $5 million, well, $4 million profit here, a little over. These figures are nuts to me. I don't know. And I wanted to showcase some of the building sizes, what they're talking about building here, right? And so the new Sun building, 4 stories, 202 feet, 53 by 202. So 4 stories times, or divided by 202 feet high, it's 50 feet a story. But again, if they were publishing their paper and they had these huge printing presses, maybe that kind of makes sense. But, some 50 feet a story is, it's an awful lot. They say the cost of this building, $290,000. What's $290,000? What's the cost of that today? That's $8 million it costs to make today. That's 6 stories at 202 feet. And then we go to, this is 6 stories at 96 feet. So a little more people size. And they get more people size as we go. 3 stories at 70 feet, 5 stories at 80 feet, This is 5 stories at 60 feet. Yeah, so we're getting, you know, now we're talking like 15 feet a story. But such high ceilings for buildings, and it makes me wonder what was the cause. This Gaither name is going to come up. He's got 5 stories on 119 feet high. More Gaithers, 5 stories, 131. So that's some 20 feet per story. It just, I don't know. The Shepherd Enoch Pratt Hospital, they get 5 stories, 112 feet. They get 20 feet a story. Cheap to build a hospital, 20,000. But there was one building. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. The East Baltimore Street on the south side for the Savings Bank of Baltimore. 1 story, 145 feet high. By 97 feet. This is a massive building for a bank. It's 10% completed, of course, at a cost of $275,000. It's a massive, massive structure for this Savings Bank of Baltimore. And this is something that just screams to me that this was an older building that they're fixing up post-fire. That it's there, it's extantly finished, but they say 10% complete because this is a massive structure for one building. I don't know. And I wanted to show that here's what they show for the fire, and I wanted to show that they were so proud of their activity, and they put this picture in here. This is what the rebuilding. We're going to look closely at this picture in a second. This is a rebuilding. It's page 12 news. This is what they put on page. They bury the story, right? They're so proud of it. Who knows? Could there have been 11 more pages of more newsworthy stuff? Yeah, so let's get up a little bit closer on this picture because one thing I wanted. Well, first off, let's look at it this way, quick. So this is allegedly some point in August of 1906. Look at these streets. I mean, to me, that looks like there's snow on the ground, and the few people that I do see, of course, are well covered. I don't know. Maybe these are summer dresses down here, but is this dirt and mud? It must be. There are things about the sky that really bother me in this picture, and the way it, how grainy the transfer is on it. I wonder if the original of this picture still exists somewhere, and perhaps my visit to the Maryland Historical Society can shed some light on that for me when I go there on Wednesday. But so this building here, what does this say? Which, I don't know where this was. But you can see it's not complete. It's empty, and they have like studs and stuff in this window. And so where are all the workmen? You would think thousands of people would have to be employed in order to get hundreds of buildings built in 18 months. Certainly, if not thousands, then hundreds, at the very least. And so where are all these people? Is this picture taken on a Sunday morning when everybody's at church or something? What's the story here? And so you can get up a little bit closer in this here. All right, so you got, like I said, I'm looking for people. You got this guy in a hat hanging out down here. That looks to be people. This is probably a person there. We got 3 people walking here. You got somebody here and here. Trio up this way. Carts. I can't tell if this is horses and stuff. What's happening? You see what could be the shadows of a few more people up and about this way, but certainly nothing that to me constitutes like congestion or heavy foot traffic or things like this, which you would expect in an area that's being so rapidly rebuilt, at least to my knowledge, and again, or at least to my way of thinking. Again, I don't know when this picture was taken, what kind of picture this is. It's really a grainy sort of transfer. But I would think there would still be more evidence along this street of the reconstruction, and it's just interesting that you really get nothing of this. The rooftops here are so bleached out, and it gets bleached out going deeper, like, from like a depth perception aspect of going down this street. just kind of gets weird and fuzzy up this way, up in here. Um, you know, so again, old photographs to me are, especially ones where all the skies are just bleached out. Oh, I should do that real quick. Like, even though he was a little bit later in he was a bit later in like the 1930s and stuff. He did lots of black and whites, you know, and he always manages to get clouds in his black and whites. I don't know, looking at the moon in his black and white here. I mean, Ansel Adams never had a problem getting clouds. And when was he? When was he active? Was he like 30s and 40s, right? So, taking pictures in the 20s and 30s and stuff, he certainly never had a problem catching clouds. It's just amazing to me that you can't find pictures from the 1800s and early 1900s with like clouds in them. At least I don't come across them anyway. So now let's move forward, because this is again the Burnt District Commission showing you all their hard work and what they've done. And so we heard from J. Harry Trigo over here, from the Travelers and Merchants Association, who was prominent in the movement for the Jubilee celebration. So let's find out how prominent he was. Now, this article, this is May 1906 for Jubilee, is from March. It may even be March 1st, 1905. And so they talk about how Baltimore City is just not going to be ready for September of 05, and that it needs to be pushed to May, and that the mayor asks for a subcommittee of the Baltimore Rebuilding Celebration Association to consider the matter, right? The special committee will consist of Mr. J. Harry Trigo, so that's how involved he sure was a prominent member, wasn't he? And I have a picture of Harry Trigo. There he is. He's kind of looking a little swearing there to me now that I kind of look at him. But, so that's Harry Trigo. All right, who else is in the committee? George R. Gaither. I have a picture of George R. Gaither. That's George R. Gaither. General Lawrenson Riggs. There's General Lawrenson Riggs. Right, this is he died in 1940, so this painting is clearly, my guess would be the 1930s. I could not find a photograph of General Lawrenson Riggs. I could not find photos of David Stewart or Edward Hirsch, but I did find a photo of somebody that could be Frederick Gottlieb. This could be Frederick. This is a Frederick Gottlieb anyway. Whether it's the Frederick Gottlieb, but is the only picture of the right-looking era that I could find. So yeah, so that's the committee, and it's their job to decide what to do about the Jubilee. All right, and so a week later, on March 8th, this article is published in the Baltimore Sun, The Bigger Jubilee of 1906. And the committee votes to advise the mayor to wait. There's a great showing can be made. President Trigo says celebration should invite nation's attention to what Baltimore has done. The executive committee of the Baltimore Rebuilding Celebration Association decided yesterday to advise the mayor that it would be impractical to hold the proposed celebration next September, and that it would be better to wait until the city is better prepared. It was also agreed that President J. Harry Trigo and Secretary Frederick C. Schonberger, now I looked for this guy, could not find him, should tender the resignation of the committee to Mayor Timanus for his action. So they resign the committee, or he resigns his presidentship of the committee anyway. And so that's why they could say in that article 6 months down the line that he was a prominent member, but he isn't anymore, right? The special committee consisting of Messrs. Trigo, Stewart, who I couldn't find, Hirsch I couldn't find, Gaither I did find, and Gaither, this name is going to, I mentioned him briefly in the who was buying up lots of land and in the city. And my favorite name, Lawrence and Riggs. Because I don't know, you could just play around with this. You could break it down in so many different ways. You could do the son of Ra, Riggs the laws. He was so good at it, they made him a general. You just mix these things up as you want. It's fun. But that's in there, that's in there. And so I wanted to find out more about this guy, Lawrence and Riggs. What a great name. And, oops, hold on, I'm not set up right. Here he is. Right, he was an American businessman, civic leader, and collector of old master prints. And now, watch what when they show old master prints. Look at that thing. Yeah, no coincidence there. All right, and so he was born in New York, but the family located to Maryland, where they had ties dating back to the 17th century. Now that's going to play in a minute. But clearly had some means because he was able to go to Princeton. Right, he graduated in 1883 with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Princeton, then obtained a law degree in the University of Maryland in 1886, and did his postgraduate history and political science at Johns Hopkins. History and political science, of course, shaping our history for us, creating that false narrative. And it says, although Riggs was trained as an attorney, he never practiced law, and that is common, right? Charles Carroll, the barrister, went to Oxford and became this lawyer, but never practiced law. Why? And also, this guy here, Lawrence and Riggs, was director of the First National Bank, the Mercantile Trust Company, National Merchants Bank, and American Bonding Company. Look at the money that this guy's responsible for. These 4 organizations here. It reminds me of the Thomases, Douglas H. Thomas Sr., it's just unbelievable. He was a member of the 5th Regiment and National Guard, and I showed their armory in one. I don't remember what video that was now, but he was promoted to Brigadier General for his service and leadership in the Great Fire. So that's where he gets the general from. He was a dedicated member of the Maryland Historical Society, and he served as president of the Board of Trustees of the Maryland Training School for Boys, the School Board of Family Welfare Association, presided over a 3-man police board, chaired the Municipal Affairs Committee of the Baltimore Association of... he was everywhere. He had close ties to George Peabody. He was a member of the inaugural Board of Trustees of the Peabody Institute, of which he served for 43 years. And what does the Peabody Institute do? Look at that building. Well, I'll get to it someday. And he was a founding member of the Baltimore Museum of Art, which, of course, museums are indoctrination sites. They help reinforce the false narrative that they're trying to create. So this guy's super connected to all of that, and he's part of the Baltimore Rebuilding Celebration Association. So I wanted to find out more. So there's T. Lawrence and Riggs, and I was like, they must be related, but I'm not exactly sure how, and I didn't go to do a family tree, but Thomas Lawrence and Riggs was an American Catholic priest and musical theater lyricist, and he was the first Catholic chaplain at Yale University, so connecting Baltimore, or Maryland anyway, and the Riggs family that way to Yale, and of course they have connections to Princeton, right? So amazingly connected to the Ivy League, right? He was the grandson of banker George Washington Riggs. So he was the grandson of George Washington Riggs, and from a wealthy upper-class Episcopalian family. And he was an acquaintance of these famous Yale alums, but he was also a member of not only of the Yale Dramatic Society, but of the Scroll and Key Collegiate Society. Now, Scroll and Key is one of the Yale secret societies. You don't hear it like the Skull and Bones. You hear about a lot, but you don't really hear a lot about Scroll and Key. He was Cole Porter's roommate. No, Cole Porter didn't have anything to do with mass hypnosis and the songs that he sang and wrote, right? He wasn't a part of that at all. So here's his involvement with the church, the Catholic Church, and Yale. Right? So he was a super connected guy. The families have to be related. right? But I wanted to tell, we're going to go back to George Washington Riggs because this is an amazing story. And I found a photograph of George Washington Riggs. Here's George Washington Riggs, 1813 to 1881. So he had, he was 60 some years, closing in on 70 something years of age when he passed. So we know that this photograph of him was before 1881. And from the looks of it, it was, probably the late 1860s and mid 1870s. And so when I see a picture like this of this sharp clarity and detail, I mean, you get a, pretty good idea. You get pretty nice and clear features and everything. But when I look at like the picture that Wikipedia has for our mayor here, his hand is all a blur and his face just doesn't look right to me. Yet this picture had to have been like some 30 years later. You would think that photographic technology would have improved and you would have gotten a better picture in the early 1900s than you would in the 1870s. But this does not look like a real photograph to me. I'm sorry, for whatever reason. I don't know if I brought that up in the either one of the burnt episodes. He was known as the president's banker. Are you kidding me? This Riggs family, right? So he was born in Georgetown, which we all know is hugely connected to the founding fathers of Maryland and Baltimore. All right, the son of Elisha Riggs, and I'm not going to go any further back in this episode than George Washington here, because there's going to be room to go with all of this. These are the cult leaders. So George Washington here marries a Scottish woman from Glasgow, and they had 9 kids, among them the priest T. Lawrence and Riggs. And he was brought into this Corcoran banking firm that helped finance the Mexican-American War and made large profits. Go figure, they made large profits financing the Mexican-American War. What was that? The 1840s, I guess, right? He was on the board of aldermen of the District of Columbia. In 1873, he was chairman of a committee to present to Congress a petition asking for an investigation into the conduct of the Board of Public Works. He helped obtain a committee report favorable to the abolition of the existing territorial form of government and was active in the establishment of the present form of government that vests all authority in Congress. So, back as far as the 1880s, and this is, I guess, the New Deal. They were trying to work on the New Deal going back as far as that. All right, so amazing story with this Riggs guy, George Washington Riggs. But this is where it's interesting here. So he died in Prince George's, Maryland, right? And although a Protestant in early life, he received the last rites of Roman Catholic Church. So because it says he came from an Episcopalian family. Yet he somewhere along the way converts to Catholicism, because he has a Catholic son, right? Because his Catholic son his son is a Catholic priest. So even going into the mid to late 1800s, there's some weird, chancery or whatever between the Protestants and the Catholics, and high-ranking political figures swapping faiths. So interesting members of this committee, and I'm going to get on Gaither some other time, but this Lawrence and Riggs and my bringing it down, just having fun with the name, I had to touch on that family just quickly. And I love they even staged this for their minutes at the Baltimore Rebuilding Celebration Association meeting. Mr. John T. Stone, president of the Maryland Casualty Company, which sounds like an insurance company to me, opposed the postponement and offered a resolution expressing indignation against the influences which have opposed the September celebration. So he's like, this John T. Stone, we must have the Jubilee. It must be in September of 2005. The people of Baltimore deserve it. So they have that. That's in their records, because that. And so this was on March 1st. And so on March 8th, they have their resolution. And the committee advises that September is just out and that they should be looking at May, like they suggested like they knew they were going to suggest going in. So they have this Boykin guy in there, Colonel W.A. Boykin, who was the chairman of the Civic Parade Committee, suggested postponement until May 1906. But then, of course, Mr. George R. Gaither has offered a suggestion which seemed to meet with favor. He proposed a dedicatory celebration on September 12 next year in anticipation of the Great Jubilee next year. See, the Great Jubilee. He thought the day could be declared, so they already knew there was going to be a Jubilee in 1906 because it was going to be the Great Jubilee. And they should do the celebration of the rebuilding in anticipation of this Great Jubilee. He thought the day should be declared a state as well as a municipal holiday, and that appropriate exercises could be held at no great expense. It was his opinion that next September will be the golden opportunity to demonstrate the wonderful progress which had been made in the burnt district. All right, and so Mr. John R. Bland, John R. Bland expressed his views in favor of postponement in the Sun last Saturday. So a few more names to mess up. So Gaither here suggests September 12. And now one thing I want to bring into attention here is the 12s. So this article, August 7th, 1905, 12-page news, page 12 news about the progress, right? And then you have March 1st, 1905, this article, May 6th for Jubilee, page 12 news. And then you have this article, March 8th, 1905, bigger Jubilee, and 1906, page 12 news. But it's just amazing the way that the 12s for this story keep going, because of course the opening of the B&O Railroad building is on the 12th of September. And that's when the Golden Jubilee is. So here it all comes, the Golden Jubilee of 1906. We're building to it. We're going to get into the Gaithers and more of the Jubilee action next episode. Until then, cheers, guys.